Hello and welcome back to another episode of No More Miserymas. This is going to be a happy month, god damn it. And today I wanted to answer a question that I have been asked in various forms. And the way I can kind of summarise it is, how do I give up my dreams in my 20s? On the surface, giving up your dreams in your 20s is probably the worst time to give up your dreams. It's when you are in the trough of your competence, as we talked about in the imposter syndrome video, and it's also, you're at the beginning of your life, you've got everything going, but it's also the first decade that you're able to function hopefully more independently and actually reassess who you were as a child and as a young person and decide if you're still that person. And sometimes that means absorbing the realities of what you can actually do, but it's also about intrinsically looking at what you actually want and if you were wrong about yourself. Now, some people are so scared of being wrong about themselves or wrong about their cultures or their families or loads of other things that they become incredibly entrenched in their own beliefs, and it seems to not only make the people around them unhappy but them themselves unhappy. But that's another issue for another day. But suffice to say, I think that the art of not holding so closely to who you are and like squeezing it to the point of like kind of killing it like a hamster, is really, really important, and actually probably one of the only skills that is kind of essential for you to learn in your 20s, whether or not you actually, in inverted commas, achieve your dreams, whatever that frickin' means. Now, a little bit of background about me. I felt incredibly stifled by school. I didn't get into loads of trouble at school, and I did do okay grades wise, but I just had a lot of, I just didn't love it. And the idea of going into an office and working 9 to 5, on a spiritual level, terrified me. So one of the things that I really started to fantasize about was being in the theatre, darling, because I bloody love drama. It still brings me so much joy to this day. I associated it with this bohemian lifestyle that would be outside of the capitalist system. I wasn't explaining it to myself like that in my head at 14, but that is kind of what I was thinking was I can remove myself from this world that I neither agree with nor aspire to, and I can go and do something quirky and always have fun. So I applied to drama school several times, did not get in. The competition is fierce, and I frankly wasn't good enough. And also I got into a summer school at a drama school and spent a couple of weeks training there, and realised how toxic the industry is. I mean, this was 12 years ago, it might have been nicer then, but realised even at that age how uncommunity focused a lot of the people who worked in it were, as opposed to all the amdram and amateur stuff I'd been doing before. And I thought, this isn't my vibe, these aren't the people I want to spend my 20s with, and also I don't know if this is as bohemian or whatever that freaking means, or breakaway as I thought it was. I'd not applied to uni. I had shunned that the whole way through sixth form, avoided it like the plague, and then eventually ended up going to uni literally as a way to afford to be able to move out. If you go to uni, they give you a student loan, and I also got a bit of a grant, and I was able to move out of my house and to the Welsh Hills, and I got to have a different adventure. I found new dreams. That unlearning of the attachment to dreams in my 20s continued. Loads of other things I dreamed about doing in my 20s that then I realised weren't right for me. But I also feel this kind of pressure in your teens and your early 20s to have a specific measurable dream. If you ever work in the corporate world, you will be familiar with this term, SMART targets. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-based, and they will be the bane of your life. And they are useful in some aspects, but also they don't generally align with how the human brain works on a big level. Do you know what I mean? It's good for a small project, but as a person, you're not always going to be able to be specific or make measurable goals. And the idea of something being attainable really depends on the way society changes and the way you are able to put in work. And what is a relevant dream anyway? And how can time-based be something that you can control? It doesn't make any sense on a big level. But particularly if you dreamed of a hashtag rebellious career, something that felt really unattainable, like becoming a pop star or living as a creative or something like that, I understand the instinct there, and I share it still to this day a little bit. which is the instinct to rebel against this idea of crowdsourcing your dreams, or like the things that society encourages. Like, you're supposed to want XYZ, and you're like, actually, I'm going to give you this very specific, measurable, zingy answer that's like, I'm actually going to be a West End actress, which will make you leave me alone about all the other things and kind of stave off this idea of having to crowdsource what is only specifically your life and your body. The danger with that is always being a slave to your former beliefs, serving a version of yourself that was much younger, much more naive, and didn't have the data to be able to work out whether that dream would actually make you happy and fulfilled and something that made sense for the rest of the world. Because there's lots of things that I maybe dreamed about doing, but then were like, no, I don't really want to be part of that industry because it's kind of damaging and I don't know if it's salvageable, or I don't really know if I want to be selling this kind of product because I've actually realised that that's maybe not what we need and we need to innovate in a different way. But when we're young and we're trying to find ourselves and we're not really in control of our environment, sometimes our dreams are all we have. Like, they're the only things that really feel like ours and that we can tailor to ourselves specifically, because everything else you can't tailor, you just have to fit in with everything else. So I get how close we hold our dreams, but we don't know what we don't know, and you can't work out whether the end goal would make you happy without first taking those first steps. Everything should be provisional. In the words of Hobo Johnson, I made $1 million and I had to spend it all on therapy. Which is like a thing about like these people who have become incredibly famous, but the heights that they had to go to get there completely destroyed their sense of self and mental well-being, to the point where they have to spend it all again getting better from the effort of getting there. Sometimes with bucket lists, I've often thought, am I the person who wants to actually actively do everything on this bucket list, or do I just want to be somebody who has ticked off everything on a bucket list? The second one, usually. It's the way I see myself. Like, if I can't achieve the dreams that I set myself at a very young age, then am I a failure? Am I not who I am? Like, who am I? What creeps me out most in retrospect is that trend of having those maps on the wall where you can scratch out all the countries you've been to. And I'm not denying the existence of a very few amount of individuals that genuinely have a curiosity and interest and like spiritual and mental capacity to be able to absorb everything they learn in every single one of those countries. But I think those people are very, very few and far between. And there is a slight colonial element to be like, gotta catch them all, gotta go to every country in the world, regardless of carbon footprint and whether I've actually really engaged with those countries and those people who live in those countries, or I've just collected all the coins and marbles and shareable Instagram pictures. And now I've got to get on my next flight. Bye! Like, if there are places that you want to visit on your bucket list, and you genuinely have a desire and a curiosity to engage with those places or see that thing, and your trip has a purpose, then I'm so excited for you. And I've had trips like that and still have trips on my wish list to go to. But the idea of like wishing to go everywhere at all times, this kind of omnipresent travel or this omnipresent like achievement list of things, like, it's just not possible. And one of the revelations recently for me, I think because there's this intrinsic link between like adults asking you, what do you want to be when you're older? And then if you say the wrong thing, they're going to be like, well, how are you going to make money out of that? There's always an emphasis on making what you dream your career and not having to do anything else. And that's not always the way to happiness, I think. Yeah, a big revelation for me recently was moving to this new place, joining an Amdram theatre society, being in a musical with them, and realising that at 31, like, I was auditioning and they were like, oh, what was the last thing you were in? And I was like, I was in Full Monty the Musical at Aberystwyth University in 2010. And they were like, because I'm somebody who loves it so much but genuinely hasn't done it for like a decade, because I realised I couldn't make money from it or do it as my job, I moved on and found other things to do, which is kind of sad because it makes me so bloody happy and I have no idea why. And it was interesting meeting everybody else in the cast, because I'm like one of the youngest people on the cast. Everybody else is kind of like 35, 40, and they have this huge resume of stuff like that they've been doing in their spare time. Like, they have just, so I've been going off and doing all this stuff, missing out on this really cool hobby, this passion that I have. And I'm like, oh, so you guys have just been doing it the whole time because you were like allowed to do the thing that you loved and not have to make money from it. And it's kind of sad, right? I mean, there was loads of other reasons. I just didn't physically have the time to do it a lot of the time when I was in London. And I think the Amdram situation in London is a little bit different to like the rest of the country. But in general, I'm kind of gutted for my former self because I kind of like realised that I couldn't have my dream, which was doing it full time straight away out of uni. So then I just like packed it down. So I think sometimes it's not really about whether you give up your dreams, but how you work out what parts of your dreams really make you happy and how you like continue to grow with yourself and remain flexible around new information. I feel like sometimes there is so much time taken up with trying to make it seem like you're making the most out of life and collecting proof and broadcasting that proof that we actually don't stop and take a minute to work out what the most actually is. So the answer to your question, how do I give up my dreams in my 20s, requires some separation. How do you give up your career dreams in your 20s? Easily, if you have a looser sense of self and you know that your worth and your value stands outside of that. But if you're trying to ask, how do I give up my joy in my 20s? Just don't. Nobody asked you to do that, and I think fighting for those parts of your life that you find particularly joyous isn't something to give up in your 20s at all. Always be open to new data, but stand firm when it comes to your right to get a bit of a giggle out of life. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to watch more videos like this one, you can click here. Here's the Vlogmas one. Here's some more 20s videos. I have been me, you have been you, and I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, I forgot. Frog snug out. God, what day is it? Who am I? What's going on?